Hello followers and welcome back to my Minecraft tutorial. This is episode 49 and in today's episode we're going to be starting our Redstone series. So this is almost going to be like a mini series within our greater tutorial series, and for the next maybe 5 to 10 episodes we're going to be focusing on Redstone, and we're going to look at how we can build, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the skills and the knowledge to go ahead and build your own redstone contraptions, which is going to be the idea behind this. So we're going to be starting out from the very basics. We're going to be going through everything. I'm going to show you circuits and all that stuff so that you can go away after this series, and if you want to use redstone to do something, you will be able to at least make a start on it. Now I'm going to be going through redstone to about a medium level. We're going to be starting off with the basics and going to a medium level. There will be some things that we don't cover because it is quite advanced and I don't entirely understand it. So while you may not have the knowledge to go away and build a redstone computer from what I'm teaching you in this series, you will be able to go from this series and make a start on it, and then maybe go and see someone else's video to get more in-depth information, and you will know how the components work within those circuits. We may revisit those more advanced circuits later on in the series, but I'm not sure on that one. I don't want to blow people away. I want to give everybody a nice basic knowledge of redstone so that you can go ahead and build redstone contraptions for yourself, and pretty much anything in survival you will be able to build with redstone. The only things that you might not be able to build are the larger creative builds like the computers and stuff like that, but anything certainly in survival, things like mob traps and really handy fun stuff with that, you'll be able to do from this series. So yeah, I'm not going to give you like ready-made builds and then you just copy them. That's not the idea of this series. The idea of this series, as I said, is to give you the skills and knowledge so that you don't have to go on YouTube and look through videos to find what you're looking for. The idea is that you will be able to do it yourself. One thing I do want to make evidently clear from the very start is if you have any questions, please put them in the comments. If you have any questions about anything that we talk about in any of the episodes, please just let me know and I'll do my best to answer, because I can guarantee that if you have asked a question, then somebody else will also want to know the answer to it. So even if it seems really basic to you, please just put it in the description, not the description, the comments. I always get those two mixed up. Put them in the comments and I'll do my best to answer, or indeed we'll go through it in a video. I don't mind giving up an extra episode of this series to cover something in more detail. That's not a problem. So if you do have a question, please put it in the description. The comments. It's because I'm so used to saying check something in the description. That's why I say that all the time instead of comments. But yeah, please put it in the comments. So in today's episode, what we're going to be looking at are key components, inputs and outputs. We're going to be starting with the very basics. This may seem incredibly basic for anybody who has had any prior experience with redstone. It will be very basic, but I feel the need to cover it, so we're going to start at ground zero and then build our way up from there. So before we start, I just want to get this out of the way right here, the stone brick and the red wool block. Throughout the rest of this series, not today but beyond this, we're going to be using stone bricks and red wool as the blocks available here. So stone bricks are a building block, and all that means is they're kind of there because they have to be to support redstone or whatever. But the energized block is something that we're going to talk about in the next episode when we talk about a concept, and this is one of the more important blocks of how things power. So just to get those out of the way, I'll talk about these more in the next episode, but just to get the difference, it's not I've just chose random blocks, there are purposes to both. So with that out of the way, without any more rambling, I guess we need to get into the episode, don't we? So there are 3 subgroups in redstone: key components, inputs and outputs, and you can see them all here. If you go into your redstone tab, you'll find pretty much everything. I don't think there's anything else here that wasn't in the redstone tab. So The key components, the inputs and the outputs all do different things. The key components are perhaps the most vital bits in Redstone. Each of these is going to get their own video, with the exception being the torch and the block are going to get covered in the same video, because they do mostly the same things, but with a few exceptions. So the Redstone Dust, the Redstone Torch and Block, the Redstone Repeater and the Redstone Comparator will all get their own episodes. And each of these does very, very specific things. They can all do all manner of things, and they're used in circuits and other things as part of Redstone. So you can almost think of this as, you could think of Redstone inputs and outputs and key components as a sandwich. You have your bread at the top, which is the input, the key components in the middle, which is the circuits and stuff, which is your filling, and then you have the output, which is the layer of bread at the bottom. So you can think of this as everything that goes on in the middle. A lot of the time this is the stuff in the middle between an input and an output. And we'll get more into these in their own episode, and we're going to talk about their properties, what they can do and how they can be used. And even beyond, when we cover the episodes on them, when we start looking at logic gates and circuits and all that stuff, we'll still be talking about these. So just to get that out of the way, the Redstone Torch, Dust, Repeater, Comparator and Block of Redstone are all part of the key components family. So, inputs. This is a lot easier than that, I have to say. This is basically, it generates power or signal. And by the way, when I say power or signal, I mean the same thing, just to get that out of the way. But the difference between these different inputs is that they have different lengths of time, or the way they are activated is different. So we have a lever, pretty standard. If I turn it on, it's going to stay powered. If I turn it off, it stops being powered. The stone pressure plate, which you can stand on, for as long as you're stood on it, it powers or gives out signal to something. However, it does not work with items. As you can see, it does not work with items. The wooden pressure plate works with items, and that will stay activated as long as the item is on there, or equally if I stand on it. Wooden button and a stone button. So here's a stone button, standard length of pulse there, or standard length of time that something is powered. But if you notice, the two different buttons, actually this one is a little faster. This one I think is 1 second, I think this one is 1.4 seconds or something like that. But these have their own uses. You're more going to choose which button depending on if you want a specific amount of time something is powered. The weighted pressure plates, light and heavy, these were added in 1.5, and these don't respond if you stand on them. They only respond with an item on them, and that was kind of a bad demo, but there. The difference between the two is the light pressure plate made of gold responds to items from 1 up to a stack. The heavy one goes from 1 up to multiple stacks. I think it's like 12 stacks to get the maximum output you can from this, or the maximum input, should I say, actually. Now we have tripwire. We stand on it, or we walk through it. Items can activate it as well, and all that jazz. It's pretty standard. You can just walk through it. And now we have two slightly special ones. I'm just going to set the time today. The trapped chest and the daylight sensor. The trapped chest only responds when it is opened, and it gives out a it gives an input when the chest is opened, and depending on the amount of people who have that particular chest open determines the signal strength from this input. And finally, the daylight sensor, and this one is a bit special in a sense that it actually doesn't require any player interaction. Like all the rest of these, you need to flick your lever, you need to stand on the pressure plate, push the button, drop an item on the weighted pressure plates, or open the chest, walk through the tripwire. This one doesn't need any interaction. This is controlled from the sun. So depending on where the sun is in the sky, the power, well, the strength of the input is different. And we'll talk about this more when we do an episode actually on the daylight sensor and how we can use it, but I just want to make that clear that this one is a bit different from the rest, and it is controlled by the sun rather than the player. So they are all the inputs. Now we have the outputs. So the outputs, I'm sure many of you are more familiar with these than perhaps the key components and the inputs. But here we go. We have a dispenser, shoots an arrow, a note block, a piston, a sticky piston, trap door, a fence gate, a redstone lamp, a hopper, a dropper, a wooden door, an iron door, and a jukebox. So there are a lot of different outputs which we can use, and I'm going to talk to you now about some of the differences. Oh, and of course, everybody's favourite TNT. That's going to blow up, but there we go. That's the explosive action for this episode. Redstone is explosive and fun. That was pretty terrible actually, but there we go. So yes, back to this. There are a number of different differences between some of these key components that sorry, not key components, outputs that are that they look the same. For example, the piston, the sticky piston, the dispenser, and the dropper look very, very similar, but they have different properties. So if we first take a look at the piston, it can push a block, but it does not pull it back. A sticky piston does pull it back. So there's the differences there. The differences between a dispenser and a dropper is that the dispenser will fire items like arrows, potions, eggs, snowballs as an entity rather than an item. So as you can see, that is an entity in the world, whereas the dropper over here will drop things like arrows, snowballs, potions, eggs as an item. As you can see, I picked that up. I probably should stand over here. It drops it as an item in the world. So you always want to make sure, if you're going to be doing something where you want things in item form, regardless of what item it is, that you're using droppers. And if you want to make something like an arrow fire or a potion turret, whatever it is, you need to use a dispenser. So we'll talk about these more when we do some things with the droppers and the dispensers, but they're the main differences between them. One unique feature that the dropper has that the dispenser does not have is that if you activate this and there's a chest in front of it, it will actually put that item in the chest rather than firing it out like a dispenser would. So we can use this in some ways to sort things as well. The wooden doors and the iron doors. The wooden door you can actually open by using your hand and right clicking, well, any item and just right clicking on it. The iron door you cannot. You only can open this by providing power or signal to it, like so. And a couple of things here which do not have buttons are the hopper and the jukebox, and these are quite special, again, in the way that they work with redstone. The jukebox outputs a different length depending on which music disc is in it when it interacts with a comparator. And we're going to look at this when we get to the comparator episode a bit further down the line, and when we get back to the regular world I'm going to show you how to make a lighted up jukebox using that special feature in the way that it outputs certain things. And the hopper, this interacts with redstone and it stops giving out items to a chest or whatever when it is powered by redstone. It has some special mechanics with redstone, and we'll talk about that as well when we get to the hopper episode, which is going to be quite a bit further down the line when we're back in the regular world. So that's it. That's the key components, the inputs and the outputs. The world download is going to be slightly different this time. You're going to get this world instead, but just this section of it, not all of these circuits. So if you want to play around with these yourself, you can. If you have any questions, then please put them in the comments. See, I got it right. And I hope that you have learned something new today, or if you haven't, then hopefully maybe next time you will. But I did want to start at ground zero so that anybody who doesn't have any redstone knowledge at all, or who doesn't own the game but is thinking about buying it, knows a bit more about what all these different components actually do. So in the next episode we're going to take a look at the Redstone Dust, or in the Redstone tab here it's just called Redstone, but we call it Redstone Dust. This stuff right here, we're going to talk about that in the next episode and talk about a couple of concepts that we need to get our heads around. And then we'll see where we go from there. It will probably be the torch and the block, then the repeater, then the comparator. So yeah, that pretty much covers everything that I wanted to say in today's episode. As I say, I hope you found it useful. I hope to see you next time when we will look at the Redstone Dust. And until then guys, see you later and have a good day.